Okay, so yesterday we focused on Bereshit Yud Chet Yud Tet, where Hashem describes the mission that He wants Avraham to have, and the centrality of Tzedek u'Mishpat in God's vision of the world, and hence Avraham foils stone, was the opposite of that. But I noted yesterday there's actually two parts of this pasuk that are important to pick up on. So what I want to focus on today is from Rav Asher Weiss. This is less sort of classic Tanachi, but I think it's Yesod in life that's important. Rav Asher Weiss has this idea, which comes up many times throughout his writings, called Ratzon HaTorah. Right? What is Ratzon HaTorah? So, simply put, it's that halacha doesn't exhaust, or explicit halacha do not exhaust the entirety of what it is that the Torah wants you to do, which should be a pretty simple fact about Torah. His favorite example of this is Tzar Balei Chaim. This is like his famous shir on this, right? Is that the Gemara says that Tzar Balei Chaim d'oraisa, but there's at least 11 answers given in Rishonim and Achronim where that comes from, because there's no pasuk that says that you have to not treat animals badly, right? So the Rishonim struggle. Is it that we learn it out from the Tam HaMitzvah of unloading an animal, right? Which is the Shita of Rashi and Shabbos Kuf Kuf Chet. Or is it that we learn it from the story of the Aton, right? That the Malach yells at the Aton, at Bilam for hitting the Aton, right? For hitting the donkey, which is the position of the Rambam and the Moreh Nevuchim. And it's quoted in Sefer Chasidim and Seven Kaf Samach Vav. And then you have all these generic ones, like some of the Achronim will say, well, it comes from Rachamav al Kol Masav and Tov Hashem Lakol and all, right? Psukim like that, or Valachta B'drachav, you should be godly and God is nice, or all types of things. So there is no like hard and fast source for it. And therefore, Rav Asher Weiss says what it really is, when it says Doraisa, what it means is the Ratzon HaTorah, this is clearly what the Torah wants. And that has an effect. He gives a second example, which is already in the Chazon Ish, that there's like 10 answers to a thing, none of them are the real answers. Right, well, this is his tendency. But he notes, like Chazon Ish says this in Yerdeh, that it's true of Kibbut Avayim, that there's a mitzvah of Kibbut Avayim, but when your parents say you have to listen to me, you have to obey me, because Kibbut Avayim, they're wrong. There's no such pasuk, right? The formal chiyuv of Kibbut Avayim is limited to very limited actions, right? Malbish, machil, mashka, and even yira is right, not arguing, right, not contradicting, but it never says you have to listen to them. And in fact, halacha l'maisa, there are many times we just say you have absolutely no obligation to listen to your parents. So where does this notion come? You have to listen to your parents. So the Chazon Ish says it's Ratzon HaTorah, right? Once you have a series of mitzvot about Kibbut Avayim, you can imply from that the Torah also wants you, under normal circumstances, to be somewhat obedient, right? We can figure out exactly under what circumstances you have to listen, but there is some sort of meta notion that emerges from the halacha, right? This isn't so different from the Ramban's notion of Kedoshim Tiyu and Vatzisa Yasher V'Atov, right? That in addition to the mitzvah, you're supposed to keep the spirit of the law. It's a bit distinct. Now, Rav Asher Weiss applies it here as follows. He notes that we have a formal mitzvah of chinuch, right? A formal mitzvah of chinuch, which is discussed in Kiddushin in the first parak and in Sukkah, right? Chinuch in terms of Talmud Torah, chinuch in terms of mitzvot. And in the Gemara, what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says, who's obligated to teach their kids Torah? What? Fathers are chayiv to teach their sons. And then the poskim get into the question, does that mean that there's no obligation of chinuch on daughters, that there's no obligation of chinuch on mothers, right? What exactly are we talking about? So Rav Asher Weiss said, look, without getting to all the discussions in poskim, he said, Lo Allah al das shum adam, that the Torah doesn't want a mother to be involved in the education of her children, and that the Torah doesn't want parents to be involved in the education of their daughter. Right, you can get into what exactly does that mean, but Lo Allah al das shum adam, right? No one ever thought that. Why? Because he said, look, when the poskim debate the exact parameters of chinuch, what they're debating is like the formalities of chinuch. Right? There's formalities to it. right? The ages you start teaching, how you start teaching Talmud Torah, right? There are formalities to it. But he said the basic notion that a Jewish parent is going to try to impart Judaism onto the next generation in some way, shape, or form, said that's the other thing we learn from this pasuk. It's, as he says, Ratzon HaTorah. How do I know it's Ratzon HaTorah? Because Avram is chosen for two things. One is the fact that he follows Derech Hashem, but the second is that is that he's not just an ethical person. It's great to be an ethical person. It's great to be a religious person. A single individual religious person who's a monk in a monastery does not make a nation. Right? What makes a nation is that each generation is capable of imparting the values to the next generation. So when Hashem describes why he chose Avraham, it's not just that he goes b'derech Hashem, but that I know he will impart that knowledge to his children, and that's the seed that enables the building of a family, and that family developing into a nation. Without that, it will die after one generation. And therefore, Rosh Hashanah says, you look at this pasuk, and you have to realize that you can't get caught up when you're looking through the sugya and you see these positions that there's limited chiyuv of chinuch, right? When it comes to women, both mothers and daughters. The only conclusion you should draw from that is that certain of the formalities that Chazal imposed in the mitzvah derabanan of chinuch are limited to men, or limited to fathers, limited to sons. But the notion that one of the most fundamental obligations we have as a Jew is to pass on the Torah, said that you see is Ratzon HaTorah. That is the most basic expression of God's will in this pasuk, where Hashem describes what it is that he loved about Avraham. So that, in this pasuk, as I said, there's two parts to focus on. Both is the content of the message Avraham is supposed to pass on, but also the centrality of transmission. And I'll just make one more point from Rabbi Jonanthan. Rabbi Jonanthan liked talking about this, that the Gemara, in its limud of how you know that you're chayav to teach, how you know you're chayav to learn Torah, what does the Gemara say? The basic chiyuv of Talmud Torah is teaching your children, right? V'limadtem. And then the Gemara says, but you can't teach unless you learn, right? So anyone who has to teach themselves. Even learning is framed in the Gemara as an obligation to teach yourself, and only itself in the context of teaching your children, right? It's Kedushin, right? Daf of Tet, right? It's as if, right, teaching is a hechitimta, right? Learning is a chitimta to be able to teach the next generation. I mean, central to the very definition of Talmud Torah, according to the way we derive it from the psukim, is this notion of teaching and not just learning for ourselves. Okay.